right, folks, it's time for world politics. And of course, there's a lot of political things that are going on in the world. And a lot of people are trying to decide whether Biden will be staying in the race. And of course, there's a number of conflicts going on and continuing to go on in the world, whether it is the conflict in Israel or the conflict in the whole area of Ukraine and Russia, or whether it's conflicts in various African nations and all along those lines. So we've actually got a special guest that has been involved in some work with the UN and has done some work with actually some refugees in various countries and all along those lines. So I'll bring her in first to see what this organization that she's part of is all about, because we do know that there are conflicts constantly going on in the world, but today is also the 4th of July. So we're celebrating the anniversary of America and all along those lines. This actually is the 248th birthday, because in 2026 we'll be hitting up on 250. Hard to believe, but yes, we're actually heading toward 300 years and all along those lines. So let me bring in my guest for today and see how she's doing and all along those lines. But definitely, I know that you've been involved in a number of things that have been in that diplomatic space, Cindy, and all along those lines. So I was reading about your organization and how it came about, and I saw that y'all were even implementing some of the UN principles and all along those lines. So I know a lot of people will be quite fascinated by this organization called the International Sibling Society. So how did this come about? How did you come about founding this organization? And what is your thoughts on this particular day, the 4th of July? Because I know a lot of people are getting ready to get out there and get their fireworks going. I know a number of friends of mine were out at various events, whether it was picnics or whether it was the Eno Festival here in Durham or whether it was a number of other things. I think some people are getting ready to go out to Dix Park, which is over in Raleigh, and celebrate some fireworks. And I think there'll be some fireworks after the baseball game later on this evening too, because we are the home of the Durham Bulls and all along those lines. So maybe you've already had your 4th of July activities.
Oh, my friends are at Lake Tahoe, which is, they're just living it up there. The water's cold, but the weather's hot outside. I know they're just having a good old time. I'm coming to you from Reno, and I want to thank you, Mark, for having us on.
Yes.
You asked about the International Sibling Society. I should clarify right up front, we are an arts and culture organization. We're a 501c3 based out here in Reno, Nevada. And we've been around since 1998. We've worked on art projects and creating awareness about international issues such as child abandonment in the 90s when we got started. We moved on into the Olympic truce and the power of sports to bring about peaceful situations and international conflict zones. So we moved into that. Then the pandemic came. We did some polling. We said, what is our focus? Where does everybody want us to go? And voices came back loud and clear. Says we want to look at these sustainable development goals. So we're an organization of all organizations around the world working together to implement or create awareness of and hopefully achieve the sustainable development goals by the year 2030. Oh, wow. So it's not too far away. We've been working on it since 2012 as humanity, and officially started 2015 with the first document that was drafted through the UN, and here we are looking at the finish line. And so we're very much running a global race for sustainability, both as humanity. Are we going to reach these really lofty goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals? And we're also running a race for sustainability, like literally with people's feet on the ground, running 5Ks, 10Ks, full and half marathons, or smaller distances all over the planet to create awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals.
And what are some of those sustainable development goals? I've heard about them, and I know that some of them are involving climate issues, and some of them are involving other issues as well. So what are some of those climate and sustainability goals?
Mm-hmm. They are big goals. They're not easy goals. They're really, really huge, big goals. They're such things as no poverty, zero hunger, quality education for all, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, good health and well-being, um, life on water, life in the water, life on land, and then it goes on up to 17, which is my favorite, which is partnership for the goals.
Yeah.
So these are some real tough goals. Um, and there's debate as to whether or not we'll reach them or not. They're
Yeah.
so hard. They're so big. Will we make it? And some people say, or some countries, some organizations say, oh, no, it'll never happen. Won't ever happen. And others are like plugging away, trying, let's see how far we can go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's fascinating and everything. You'd also mentioned that previously you had done some art projects that had been connected with the Olympics as well. And we know the Olympics are getting ready to come up in a couple of weeks and all along those lines. And a lot of times people are thinking of the Olympics as a kind of peacekeeping effort historically and all along those lines. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a number of conflicts going on in the world and all in that space. So I just wondering your take on the Olympic movement and how your involvement with that was and everything.
well, my involvement was in 2009. The U.S. Olympic Committee sent me to the International Olympic Academy in Greece, and so I presented on the Olympic Truce, which is the longest standing peace agreement or peace accord in recorded history. That's like spanned the sands of time for like 12,000 years in antiquity. And how it came about is, this is in ancient days, because what we have now is the modern Olympics.
Right.
There was the ancient Olympics that kind of died out, and then they got rejuvenated by someone in France, around the 1800s. And what we have now is called the modern Olympic Games. But anyway, in antiquity, all the nation states were fighting all the time. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
So they were fighting all the time. And they wanted to be able to play these games, and they wanted their athletes to be able to travel safely to the games without people killing them. So they came up with the Olympic truce that says, okay, we're going to put our weapons down long enough to go play at the Olympics. So that was the Olympic truce way back then. So that was my involvement with that. There's an interesting issue that's come up with the Olympics. I was just doing a podcast last night, and it came up in conversation. And then I was talking with an Olympic colleague today that's in Paris and asked him about it. But have you heard about the river going through Paris that where some of the athletes are supposed to be competing?
Yeah.
And
I think I've heard that it's got some issues with pollution and whether that's even safe to compete in that particular river and all along those lines. Because I think some of the swimming events and some other events are supposed to be taking place there. I think I heard that from some other news outlets. That's what I had heard, to answer
Exactly. What an interesting idea. And if you take that idea, it's so compelling. It's playing out in front of us right now. We don't know how it's going to end. But that's related to number 6 of the Sustainable Development Goals is clean water and sanitation. It's also related to number 14, which is about the water and the oceans, life in the water. But the whole idea of clean water, that is one of the Sustainable Development Goals, clean water on the planet. And Paris has the issue it has. Where does that say that we're at as a planet? So that's quite amazing. They're trying to swim a triathlon through there. So, wow, it'll be interesting to see how that plays itself out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out and everything. What got you first engaged in this work and wanted to do this kind of work? Were you a athlete or an artist yourself? So what got you involved in wanting to kind of do this diplomatic work and using the tools of arts and sports in order to do diplomacy?
Oh, wow. If I had a good answer for you, I think I'd tell you exactly what it was. But I can also tell you this. I would have never imagined this life path in front of me. It's just unfolded as it has. And it's amazing how, it's kind of sewn itself together like it has. Who would have ever imagined the idea and the ability to be able to work on such issues like sports for development and peace. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw that you had done some various art projects, including some that were in Eastern Europe and all along those lines. I think Latvia was one of the places that I saw that you had done some art projects when you first got involved. I guess that was in the maybe late 90s or early 2000s. But I just wondered if you could share a little bit about how you had engaged art in that first project, because I did see there was a number of refugee groups that were from various continents around the world that you were involved in that space.
Okay, well, thank you so much for looking into our history as an organization. Anybody can look into this. Just go to our website, which is issnow.earth, and you can scroll down through and you can go to all kinds of different pages and different things and see what we're about as a group and where we've been, what our history is. There's one thing that you've noticed. You saw Latvia, you saw the kids' art. Thank you for looking into that and everything. There is not a refugee element. All of those paintings and all of those children that we visited during the 1999 tour, which is what you're talking about, the 1999 Defining Sibling Bonds study and tour, we were working with children in different orphanages. So these were children who lived in orphanages that were abandoned in their own home countries and had nothing. They were wards of the state or the country that they were in. They weren't refugees. The element on top of that was that a lot of them potentially are adopted out to different countries, and we kind of looked at that issue and says, is that a good thing? Taking kids out of their culture, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But the end result of that project was a lot of children's art that was later exhibited at the United Nations in New York City in their visitors lobby there. So,
yeah, interesting. You said you've done some training with the United Nations. What is your own feelings about the United Nations now? Because I know that even with some of the conflicts that I've mentioned and everything, the UN is sometimes seen as a peacekeeping force. I know that sometimes people are frustrated by their effectiveness or lack of effectiveness, depending on how the situations are and everything. But I just wondered if you got some training in UN tactics and everything, what your thoughts are about the modern UN.
Yeah. Hey, I tell you what, I'm going to answer that question just like an Olympian would answer the question. Hey, you asked me about the UN. Let me tell you, I am an American. That's it. I'm an American. I'm American. If I was, looking at the Olympic Games, I am American. There's other stories that are going to catch my heart, but hey, I'm an American. So when it comes to work with the United Nations, let's not be deceitful. Hey, I'm an American. So the thing about the United Nations that's so wonderful is that it is a conglomeration of countries. It is an international camaraderie of just working together. That's what everybody's doing. Everything that comes through the UN is resolutions, which is not binding. It's not like somebody's going to beat you up. We have the Security Council, at the world, but it's limited into, scope. So really everything that goes through the UN is strictly, it's a resolution. It's voluntary. Just like the Olympic truce is the same way. We are talking a lot about the Olympics today with that. Well, it is that time. But with the Olympic truce actually is a resolution that goes through the United Nations every 2 years before the Winter Games and the Summer Games. It just, every 2 years through the United Nations goes an Olympic truce resolution. And all the countries cannot wait to sign on board. They're just, Olympic truce, let's do it. And but then, doesn't always solve conflicts. There's still conflicts in the world. But when it comes time to play and go to the Olympics, everybody is on board. So that's the United Nations. That's where you can come together as different countries in your own identity, in your own country, working across borders with other countries.
Yeah,
No,
that makes a lot of sense. Just out of curiosity, have either of the two candidates said anything about their views about this sustainability goals and everything? Because, like I said, I haven't followed enough to see whether Biden or Trump or anybody had said anything in favor of or against these goals. So I just didn't know if you had heard anything yet as to whether they had come in to support these various sustainability goals.
hmm hmm Well, you know what? That's a good question. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to dodge that one.
Okay.
I completely. As a matter of fact, I was we're doing a podcast in India coming up,
Uh-huh.
and the person asked me, do you know political analysts that could speak on the, Biden Trump situation? And I did ask a friend to ask some of her friends, and anyway, and a few days later, she came back empty-handed, and so I had to tell her, you know, sorry, that's just, an issue. Since we weren't able to find anyone for you and no one is willing to take on that issue, myself included. And so we're not going to be able to help you in finding a political analyst to answer your questions. So it's just a topic I had,
Yeah.
so I tell you what, I don't want to speak about that particular election,
Uh-huh.
but to stay on the sustainable development goals and gear them into the race and
Uh-huh.
what we're doing with this race.
Right.
Could we go in that direction a little bit?
Yeah, if you want to tell us about the race and how the race is going and how people can get involved in the race, that would be definitely wonderful.
All right. Well, so the International Sibling Society is organizing the global race for sustainability. Of course, as an arts and culture organization, this is just one big, huge art project where where art is imitating life. Okay. So everything we talk about with this global race for sustainability and the fact that we're running 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, full marathons, and all of that, you know, it really is symbolic to what's actually happening with the United Nations and these goals. So the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are very defined, definite, and hard to achieve and take a lot of international cooperation to move forward. So does our global race for sustainability, which involves runners running in over 190 countries. So we have lofty goals, 190 countries signing up to run, around the planet in long distances and short distances. It's not easy. It's hard. The race itself, we're going to end it before the Olympics start. So we only have a few more weeks. We're going to close the leaderboard on the 20th of July. So it's just a few weeks away. And so we are very much still pulling countries on board, so we're to the very end. We're still, trying to reach those goals of 190 countries, involved.
Now, are they all gonna run at the same time in different stages, or how is the running being done? Because I doubt very seriously that they're running around the globe like in a marathon or a relay kind of format. So I'm imagining that they are running in their individual countries at designated times.
Yes, yes. I bet you, I know that broadcasting and TV shows and things like that. I know that about you.
Yes.
So this whole genre of reality TV and reality shows, this race is very much a reality race. What happens is going to happen, and we have no idea how it's going to turn out. So to answer your questions, is it virtual? Are people running in masses? It could be all of that. People have been running this race since May, okay? And then we end it in July. So people have already been running. As a matter of fact, we've got a group we're calling the Pacer group that's just running ahead of all of us, and then we're just falling behind and doing what they're doing. And what they're doing is this. They first go and register for the race, okay? We couldn't do this race if it wasn't for the platform race roster. So are you a runner by chance?
It's been a long time since I ran. I used to run way back in my high school days and even a little bit in my younger years. I'm in my early 60s now, but I have run in the past, but I've not run recently. Now I'm more of a walker, but may get back into running at some point. But yeah, more of a walker than a runner.
Yeah, walker. Some of these great walks, like, and just one that comes to mind is the MS walk. That's a great one. A lot of these walks, that these organized walks where people are walking for a cause.
Right.
All those people are usually going to a race platform to register. Okay,
Yes.
so our race platform is Race Roster. So if you're a runner, or if you've had any of these organized events, biking events, whatever, you may already have an account with Race Roster. So you just go to the Race Roster registration platform, and you can get there through our website, wherever it is right there, issnow.earth.
Right.
Click register, and it will take you to Race Roster. They are the pros when it comes to registering and organizing for races. Okay, so that we are in their hands. They are doing, all the heavy lifting. And so you can register for a free family fun run, or you can go on up to a marathon. And we have scholarships available for if there's any registration fee that's, we do have scholarships, but you will be prompted to download a app in your phone. And I forget the name of the app every time. I think it's Race Runner. And anyway, so you'll be prompted to download an app. And when you're ready to run, all you do is walk out your door and you hit start. And then you do your running. And then when you're done, then you hit stop. And it's that easy. You're done.
Okay.
All right. And we do have a Team Kenya. So in Kenya, all the world, world recognized runners are from there. They're pretty good runners. So, I guess technically you're running against them, because all the results come in the leaderboard through Race Roster. So, yeah, you're running with other people around the world, and it's all queued up through that app through Race Roster.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's queued up that way and all along those lines, and then you're just going to run against individuals that are running, like I said, at the same time as you are, but not simultaneously. So it's less like Amazing Race and more like almost like a virtual race and everything along those lines.
Yes, Race Roster has us in the virtual category, so it is considered a virtual race where you get to choose when you want to run.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You get to choose when you want to run and all along those lines. Just out of curiosity, before I bring Sasha in, because that's the other guest we have today. Well, actually, he's a regular panelist, and we'll talk about some of the world issues and everything. You don't have to stick around for that and everything. But I was just wondering your reflections on the whole notion of America, because like I said, it's celebrating its 248th anniversary. So without getting overly political and everything, just what is your reflection on America as a country?
Well, I am an American. That is how I was placed on this planet. That's what I know. That's what I am. And what is my reflections on being American?
Being American, and also your reflections on Independence Day in general. What does Independence Day mean to you?
Yeah, it was just mentioned on a podcast, something about the Independence Day was a little bit off a couple of days. Have you heard about that?
No, I hadn't heard about that.
Celebration. I don't know. We're talking about that. I don't know. It kind of sounds like a Star of Bethlehem story. It's like, well, when did that star was that star in the sky? I don't know. But anyway, celebrating the 4th is an exciting thing. I'm taking it easy this year, full of podcasts. I think this is my 3rd of the day. Okay. And all my friends are at Lake Tahoe in the cool mountain water, celebrating, getting ready for fireworks tonight. Gotcha. But it's a wonderful day of celebration in our country.
Yeah, definitely a wonderful day of celebration in the country. Actually, Sasha had his day of celebration on the 1st, because he was doing it because he's in Canada on July 1st, which ironically is my birthday and everything, but he was doing it in Canada because they celebrated Canadian Day on July 1st, which is when they have their independence.
That's right. Canada Day is still around. And if United States wouldn't go for this so-called independence, it would be a similar country to Canada, and it would be a wonderful society because right now, obviously, there's a huge crisis. Trump is becoming a president. The old democracy is going to vanish from United States, and it will be really, really one of the most horrible societies around, and there is no escape from it, especially if Biden will remain a leader of Democratic Party. That's horrible. I think he's a distinguished man. He had a great life and great achievements, but it's time for him to go because the challenge to defeat Trump is too much for him. And unless Trump will be defeated, there is no future in United States at all.
Mhm. Interesting take on it and everything, but that's Sasha's take and all along those lines. I'm just wondering, and this is it, Cindy, if you want to jump into it, you can answer it and everything. But I do know some people are wondering whether we will hear this weekend about Biden dropping out and everything. And I know that earlier you didn't want to deal with that political, and we can respect that and everything. But I did hear some people that are thinking that he may drop out as early as this week. I personally think he's going to stay in the race and all along those lines. But hey, who am I? I'm not one that has direct contact with the Biden camp and everything. But I just wondering, uh, do you think that we're going to have another candidate? So, Sasha, if you want to tackle that one, or Cindy, if you've got any opinions, you can let us know and everything.
It is a great reality show.
Yes.
We don't know the outcome.
Yeah. It's definitely a
It
new
will be
reality.
interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. It is.
And I couldn't begin to speculate.
Uh, yeah, I agree with you. Nobody wants to speculate, but the reality is the man has to go. Just nothing will fix the fact that he is 81 years old. He looks like 91, he talks like 101, and it's not going to be cured by any medication or any other stuff. He's just getting older and older day by day. See, some people age very gratefully, and even in 90 plus, they're still quite coherent and physically they're okay. There are some people who at 65 they hardly can walk or talk or do anything. It's just very individual. See, Biden was, in my opinion, he was doing the best he could, and his last State of the Union address went well. He was quite convincing, but that's probably how far he could go. That's it's all falling apart right now, and it could fall apart next year or maybe next 2 years. So maybe he would still perform well enough to win the election, but now the risk is too high. Nobody can afford to get Trump to power, so they have to do the best they can to avoid Trump winning the election. And Joe Biden is not the remedy for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point and everything along those lines. Hey, Cindy, along those same lines and just kind of pivoting it slightly and everything. A lot of the things that you're doing are in the exercise realm. I mean, one of the things that they kind of joked about on that debate and everything with their golf handicap and everything. So I just wondering, in your own view, how important is it as a goal for us to be in a healthy life and all along those lines? Because that's something I talk about on a number of podcasts, not just this one. But I just wanted your take on the importance of health, because I'm thinking that that's one of those sustainability goals, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it is. Number three, health and well-being for everyone. Good health and well-being. So you asked me if health or sports or maintaining your body is important, and I would definitely say yes. It's not always easy. There's times recuperating from surgeries or recuperating from the pandemic. There's all types of things that interfere with that, but just to move forward in a healthy lifestyle is very important. So important that it's the third goal in the sustainable development goals.
Yeah. How, because I know it's going to come up with, like I said, there's a number of and I'm sorry to say they were refugees earlier, and I did read that they were parts of orphanages and everything. But how heartbreaking is it for you when you see some of these orphans that you have run across and everything? Because I'm imagining that some of them are from war-torn areas and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on that, because I'm imagining there'll be a number of orphans both in Ukraine and Russia, as well as matter of fact, there are a number of orphans in both of those countries, as well as in the sea. Eritrea and Ethiopia and Israel and Hamas areas and a number of other places. But I just wondered how much of an impact was it on you over the last several years or decades dealing with these young people and seeing these orphans?
Hmm. And it's been over 20 years ago since those studies, since 1999 that you're talking about. And when we got back and we were talking with everybody, we were asked these questions a lot. And I'm telling you what, there's something about children, and I want to say children and their evil ways, but their evil ways is to totally just brighten our days. And we think we're going into the grimmest situations. And there's something about kids riding tricycles, just having a magnificent time, completely ignoring the fact that they have no rubber on their tires, and that their bikes are all rusted and all of that kind of stuff. They don't, so the magic of childhood seemed to overshadow a lot of, the violin string stories of children living in orphanages. They had that effect on us, and we ended up doing a lot of painting with the kids, and just the amazing things that they painted. We had a positive experience in the orphanages because kids are amazingly positive.
Yeah, along those
and
same lines.
resilient regardless of their situations.
Yeah, and actually, one of the videos that Sasha sent, and I see Shaquille's in the background. He's over there in Australia. Hopefully, he'll get on camera at some point along those lines. But one of the videos that his good friend Ivan sent was actually kids that, even though they're in a war-torn country, I think you'll remember this video, but it was a video that Ivan showed of the kids actually doing skateboarding, even though they were in the middle of that war-torn country, but they were not letting that stop them from having fun, even though they knew that they were fighting for their total existence and all along those lines with that Russian invasion and everything. But they were still very much engaged in what Cindy would call childlike wonder, because they were not going to let it stop them from doing some fun things as well. So I think that video he showed like about a month and a half ago.
Actually, I would like to add something. First of all, there is a very interesting article from the Economist that I just read, and the cover. It's on the cover. There is an argument that Mr. Biden must withdraw from the presidential race. The virtue of democracy is what voters can choose who governs them, but Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump offer a choice between the incapable and the unspeakable. America's renewal needs to start now. There could be no better way than for the Democrats to choose a new candidate to defeat Trump. Now, of course, Republicans can do the same thing, but Republicans can't replace Trump. It's just not going to happen. Now, thankfully, the Democrats are being forced to remove Biden, and once they will do, and any candidate who is younger than Biden, more vigorous than Biden, can better deliver the meaning of what Democrats are standing for and what Trump is standing for, that person will win election. But it's not going to be Biden, that's for sure. Now, speaking about children, Ukraine, and that issue, unfortunately, the war is not going to be over anytime soon, because Russia will never agree to any peace without taking over Kiev. That has to happen in order for war to finish. The Ukrainians will never allow that to happen. Therefore, the key to end the war is with United States administration. But the United States never made up its mind whether to uh, get Ukraine to win the war or Russia to win the war or stop the war or continue the war for a year, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years or longer. I'm losing any thread to see what United States did in the last 2.5 years. If they would provide all assistance Ukraine needed in 2022, the war would be over a long time ago. Russia would leave Ukraine and never touch it again. That never happened. Then the war continued. Then the United States stopped sending any help for 6 months. Now it started to send help again. It's a little bit too late, too little, but it's happening. Okay, thank God for that. But it doesn't solve the problem. So this situation will go on for years to come, unfortunately. And a lot of people are being killed, both on the Ukrainian side and the Russian side. That's the reality of this situation.
Well, we've got another person from another part of the world that has become a new friend, but he actually knows something about what you were talking about because he's actually brought it up a couple of times as well. So Shaquille, Cindy's group has actually been involved with the sustainability goals, and they're actually part of a race organization that is doing work in that field and everything. And I know that you are familiar with that as well because you brought it up a couple of times as well. So their organization is actually a running group that is trying to accomplish those goals that the UN put out there in terms of sustainability, whether that's clean water, whether that's clean air, or a number of the other things. But like I said, I've heard you talk about that even before meeting Miss Cindy and everything, and she's over there in Lake Tahoe and everything. So if you just want to share about some of your involvement in that space, because I know you've done some work in that also.
The beautiful Lake Tahoe. If you stay after the show, Cindy, I'll actually just change contact details. So I'd like to talk to you off air. So yeah, look, there's something that I think is really important. Childhood should be magical. It should be as magical as it possibly could. I've had some issues when I was growing up, and I think it's very easy in the West to go, it was horrible. Some kids picked on me at school, but you don't realize what a really bad childhood is until you go overseas and see what some of these kids have to endure. And as Cindy said, they're very resilient, and it kind of breaks your heart a little bit when you go to really poor parts of the world, and you can hand them, a tennis ball or a soccer ball or something, and their eyes light up, and you think it's just a ball, like it's nothing, like it's not really that important a thing.
The power of a soccer ball.
Exactly. I had a gentleman that I knew years ago, and his son started collecting the old toys from his classmates. They used to send them into Africa and into some of the Southern American countries because, hey, we don't need the toys anymore. You guys can get some fun out of it. So there is a lot of issues that causes poverty and causes these young people not to have the opportunities that we enjoy here in the West. So I think we can do better. We all know I'm not going to start espousing the virtues of socialism or communism because I'm not. I think capitalism is the right idea. But I think we have to recognize when our form of capitalism causes a problem or when our level of capitalism becomes unethical. And the reality is that big corporations, especially big multinational corporations, are psychos. Like if they talk about not having enough asylums in America, if you build asylums, what you need to do is to put every big, massive multinational corporation into that asylum because they act like complete psychos. And they're not acting the way that either shareholders or the people that work there or their customers would want them to act. And it causes a lot of displacement around the world. It's not all the fault of the West, but I think we play a very big part in it. Sasha, to your point about Biden and Trump, look, I know your feelings on Trump, but if you're going to talk about politics, let's be honest here. They're not. Why would the Republicans replace him? He could be the devil incarnate. It doesn't matter. Okay, they're not going to replace him because they're winning.
That's what
And
I
you
said.
know they're right.
That's
So-
exactly what I said.
Yeah, I know, but then you go on to talk about, well, the Democrats have to do this, the Democrats have to do that. The
Yeah.
bottom line is the Democrats have put themselves in this position by their refusal to acknowledge what all of us could see. Right? You see, you're not in America, and I'm not in America. Okay, so we know how ridiculous American media is. Okay, we already know that. They have tried to tell their own people, and that's one thing. We can look at it and go, okay, well, Americans will tell themselves all sorts of things. But they have then tried to tell everybody else in the world that we're right-wing conspiracy theorists when we say, Biden looks a bit old. He forgot the Australian Prime Minister's name. In fact, he forgot what country the Australian Prime Minister was when he was in the AUKUS meeting. He looks like he's getting a little bit old. No, it's a right-wing conspiracy theory. He was walking up the stairs to Air Force One and he fell over 3 times. Oh, no, there was a big gust of wind 3 times. I mean, they've done this to themselves. Okay, I get no joy out of the level of division there is in the United States. I think it's really tragic because we all rely on the United States. We're all allies of the United States. We want the United States to do really well. But unfortunately, they have been too busy dividing themselves along partisan lines to talk about things that really matter. Debt levels is a problem. I haven't quite finished my rant, Mark. Debt levels in the United States are really high, and you've got all these unfunded liabilities that are coming on the books. You've got the education system at all levels, not just at university level, but at all levels, that appears not to have the right amount of funding. So kids are being left behind. We know that kids are graduating high school with results that are not as good as their parents and grandparents. We know that healthcare is not accessible to the everyday American people. And when I'm in the United States and I go to various places, I often go to some churches in the southern states, and I see signs there asking us to donate money. Well, not asking me, but asking other Americans to donate money and food, because 20% of Americans don't have enough food or experience food insecurity, whilst they tell the rest of us that they are the wealthiest and greatest country on earth. There's a serious problem in what the government does over there. But I'm not going to become partisan in American politics and blame just Democrats or just Republicans, or worse still, just the 2 current people that are leaders of those 2 parties being Trump and Biden. These problems have been going on for decades. The world deserves better in relation to what we are doing internationally. And frankly, Americans deserve better. Given the amount of resources and wealth that they have, they shouldn't be expected to live the lives of deprivation that many of them live.
Shaquille, may I ask you, the problems that you described, I totally agree with you and I never denied that, but for some reason you believe that Trump and his administration will solve all those problems, and Democrats cannot solve those problems. This is not the most important issue. The most important issue is that Trump is clearly becoming a dictator. It's going to be dictatorship. For all that talk that there should be nobody above the law, it's already happened. The Supreme Court made someone above the law. You know that, and I know that.
Let me just hold up. Let me just pull you up here for a minute. Amongst all of my right-wing friends and all of my conservative friends, they consider me to be a bit left. They consider me to be the resident left. No, let me finish. I'm responding directly to you. Amongst my left-wing friends, amongst my left-wing friends, they consider me to be a little bit too far to the right. But only on Pod TV and only at the hands of people like yourself, Sasha, who I love and respect immensely, do I get described as being somebody who adores and supports Donald Trump. I am not a fan of Donald Trump. In fact, before the 2020 election, when we were talking, I talked specifically about policy and repeatedly said what I thought about him as a person and a business person, right? And I didn't say very complimentary things about him. So please don't say that I think all these things are wonderful. All I'm saying is that when you guys are not prepared to put your feelings aside and just look at things rationally, and you come up with these things, oh, he's going to be a dictator and this and that. I don't agree. But me not agreeing that things are quite as bad as the way you're describing does not equate to me saying, oh, Donald Trump, what a wonderful person. I should invite him around for dinner, right? I'm not a great friend of Donald Trump's. I just don't hate him the way that you and other big media and the guys on Pod TV hate him.
Okay, forget about hate. Let's go for facts. So the man is admitted rapist. He is.
He didn't admit it. He's a not admitted one. Okay. He hasn't admitted it.
He lost everything in his life, including his father's fortune of $400 million. He lost election. He lost Senate. He lost House. He got 2 impeachments. For one man, it's just more than enough. And I'm not talking about all kind of lawsuits that he was involved in and settled, and some of them he lost. A lineup of 26 women who were harassed and raped by him and so on. You know, why do you need such a miserable person to be in charge of the most magnificent country in the world? Why can't you find somebody else? So the Republican Party, they can't find anybody else because of that flaw.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on a second.
If America wants to change its political system, it can do so. Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong. He decided that he wanted to run for, let me finish the sentence before we react to that. He decided that he wanted to run for politics. He ran as a Republican. He attacked every Republican. He was a long shot. He won the nomination. I'm talking about back in 2016. Right. He won the nomination. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just putting his hat in the ring and he was giving it a go, like RFK Jr. right now. People say, oh, he shouldn't do it, this, that. He's just throwing his hat in the ring. This is the political system. And whether they get success or not, it's a different story. Let me bring up a more pressing issue to me. Okay, Monsanto has developed these seeds which are genetically modified that grow crops. And I'm going to totally abridge the story. So there's a lot of details I'm leaving out. What they did was they went to India, to rural parts of India. These people can't read and write. They're not the most academically gifted people, and they've got a bit of land, 5 acres or a couple of acres or whatever, and they use that land to feed their family. And they've had that land for generations. Monsanto goes down there, gives them these seeds, and these people were told, hey, you just have to give us a little bit of your harvest. Don't worry about paying for the seeds. Just give us some of the harvest, things like that. These people can't read and write English. So they signed the agreements by putting ink on their thumbs and putting their thumbs down on the piece of paper. Fast forward a couple of seasons, and all of a sudden Monsanto says, well, actually, you didn't pay what you were supposed to pay. And I'll totally abridge the story. Some of the poorest people on the planet, these are not intelligent, I won't say intelligent, they're not academically gifted people. They're just people trying to survive. See what happened? Let me finish, please. Just please. I'm right at the punchline, so just let me finish, please.
Okay.
You know what happened? They lost the land, and some of these people would wrap ropes around their necks and end it because of how humiliated they were about letting their families down and all that sort of stuff. And that is on the back of American capitalism. Now, again, I'm a capitalist, but that's not capitalism. That's bullshit. So I am much more concerned about what we here in the West do to the poorest people on earth than I am about whether or not Donald Trump's a prick or whether or not Joe Biden can string a sentence together. Okay? I think that we need to start focusing on issues that actually matter. And again, I will repeat, if we in the West are not prepared to do the right thing by people around the world, then we deserve for the rest of the world to no longer trust us, and we deserve for them no longer to respect us.
Hey, just really quickly, 1 second, Sasha. That sounded very much like sharecropping because I'm in the South. So the way you described it, that sounded like a modern day version of sharecropping.
Not quite the same thing, Mark. Different technologies, but I get where you're coming from. Cindy, is it Cindy?
Yes.
Let's get your thoughts and feelings. I'm sure that you don't want to get involved in the political skirmishes between Sasha and myself, but please share
I
your
was
thoughts.
actually going to ask Cindy a very quick question, which is based on what y'all just did and everything, because you have to do a lot of work with a lot of people that are of different opinions and everything along those lines, even with your work in your organization, even with the run. I'm thinking that there are probably people from the left, probably people from the right, probably people from the center, to use Shaquille's favorite thing, and all along those lines. So how do you navigate those conversations? Because like I said, you mentioned that some of the runners are in Kenya, some of the runners are probably in Eastern Europe, so they're in a number of places. So how do you navigate what you just saw here and what we have here regularly on Pod TV, these kind of differences and everything within your organization? So how do you navigate that when I'm sure that there are people like Shaquille and Sasha that have different groups, and I sometimes have different opinions as well. So how do you navigate that in your organization?
To be fair, Sasha and I agree on everything except for Donald Trump and Joe Biden. That's
Well, you just asked how I would navigate it. The friend in India, the podcaster that was just asking me if I knew some people who would be willing to speak on this issue, here are two. So there's an opportunity in India for you to for this discussion to continue. People are wanting to hear about it. And actually, the story that you just told about, what you saw happen, the story of what you're saying happened in India. My heart goes out to friends in India, because they really do have high standards that if their honor is tarnished, that what you said in that story is actually, they do that type of thing.
It's very, very sad. And I think that for people like yourself and me, to a lesser degree, I am actually a board member of a charity of an orphanage and school in Kenya. We I think in the West, looking at it from our perspective, we have to look at, it's one thing just for us to go around and raise money and send the money there. But we actually have to look at what we're doing, because oftentimes it's because of us that these problems are caused. It's not always because of us. I don't want to say, it's all the West's fault. I'm British and I'm Australian. I was born in Australia. I'm British. I'm not going to sit here and say it's all the fault of the West. But there is a lot of things that we do that is very, very harmful. And you can go to like these little like oceanside towns around Africa, and you can see these Africans that will jump in these like little tiny boat things that you just look at and go, that's going to sink, and they go out there, because what do? They just go and get some fish and they bring it back and they feed their families with it, they feed their community with it, but there's not enough fish there anymore, and so they're struggling. And then we sit there and go, well, you know what we'll do? We will, in the West, we'll loan you the money, and then you're going to pay it back to us. And then because you can't, well, we're going to seize some of your resources or put a tariff on or something like that. And you think this isn't fair. It's not what we should be doing. Especially with Africa, where we in the West are taking at least $10 trillion a year out of Africa, which goes to the US and Europe, majority of it. And they get like hardly anything. Out of it. It's not a fair way for us to conduct ourselves. And I think that we need to pay a lot more attention to what we're doing. And if I could just bring up that song, Michael Jackson's Heal the World. How long has he been dead now? Is it like 10 or 15 years? I think that any of us that listen to that song would have to look at that and go, wow, it's 2024 and we still haven't managed to heal the world. It's a poor reflection of us, I think.
Well,
but I absolutely support what you're doing, Cindy, and I hope that you get
along those same lines. I've brought up on this show and several other shows that you're correct about Michael Jackson, but Dr. King said some very powerful things, and some of those things that he was bringing up, and that was more than 50 years ago, are still things that we are dealing with today. So I find that to be a very much of a travesty as well, because some of the things that he was concerned about, including around race relations, the world economy, the world climate, a number of things that he wanted to bring into the forefront, they're still out there. Go read Chaos and Community, and you'll see that a lot of the things that Martin Luther King was talking about at that time are still relevant to this day.
Look, we can argue about all sorts of things: race relations, tax rates, international relations, a whole lot. I think we've got to we have to agree on something somewhere. can we agree at least on this? If we are currently producing 9 times more food than we can possibly eat as a population, that there is no excuse for anybody to be going hungry? Can we just agree on that? Then we can talk about how we solve the problems, but can we just agree on the fundamental issue that there shouldn't be anybody going hungry? That there shouldn't be a child that goes to bed, or like, I don't know how much work you've done, Cindy, in the really impoverished areas, but you get these little kids that haven't eaten for a really long time. You can't just give them an apple or something. We have to use like this sort of like really sugary, creamy milk type thing. Like, and you can only just put like a little bit on their lips, and like it takes ages, and it's really hard. And then because there's all this food around them, and you've got to try and stop them from eating because it's going to make them sick. Like, it's just like there's no excuse for us to have human beings that are going through that. They're all related. They're all brothers and sisters.
A lot of food insecure people right in United States, and nothing is done to relieve that problem. Now, if you expect that food producers of United States and some other leading countries in the world, so your proposal sounds like they should provide all this food for free to all other people in needs, hungry people, or so on. Probably not. I don't think that's what you provide. So they have to be paid in order to provide these foods to whoever needs that food. Would you agree with that or not?
No. Well, first of all, I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all. Let me address it. Let me address it though in a couple of ways. One, you don't have to pay them. You can give them a tax deduction. There's all sorts of ways, or a tax offset. But more importantly, if I can use an Australian example, Western Australia specifically used to have a thing called the Potato Growers Board. I won't bore you with the whole thing, but what the Growers Board did was it imposed restrictions and limits on how much farmers could grow. And if they grew too much, they were literally told to take the produce and let it rot. Meanwhile, the economy had turned down in Western Australia, and the Western Australian government incentivized charities to ask people to raise money so they could bring food in from overseas to feed people in Western Australia while food was rotting on the side of the road. So the farmers said, look, we're not allowed to sell this to you, so drive up here and just take it because we don't want it to rot. They were threatened with jail terms for providing that food. So what I will say to you is I don't believe that there are some circumstances where food insecurity is because of other issues. But there's a lot of circumstances where this has happened because of ridiculous government regulations and laws, and it can be easily solved, but they choose not to do it. And all I'm saying, Sasha, is we can talk about how we should fund it later. Let's just agree first that there shouldn't be a person who goes to bed hungry. Let's agree on that. We can discuss on the rest.
I completely agree with you, Shakib, that just the step of agreeing and acknowledging the fact that, yes, we can keep people from going hungry because there is enough food. Can we just agree that it's possible, which is what you're asking? Can we just agree on that? And, I would say yes, that we can. There's ways, and that, opening up discussions as to how is what you all are about to do. But it's also the Sustainable Development Goal about number 1, which is eliminating poverty. Can we agree that it is possible to eliminate poverty? Well, hold on. There's a professor, Jeffrey Sachs, in New York, Columbia University. He's an economist, world economist. He says, yes, it can be done. He's got the formulas figured out to where poverty can be eliminated. Now, I would just as soon tell you or I would probably get his numbers wrong, but if I remember them right, if there was of every $100 of the richest countries, every $100, if only 50 cents of that was set aside and given to the quote poor, that would eliminate poverty around the world. That's a solution from a world economist.
There is no such solution at all.
So I don't.
The fact is,
I understand the point that you're trying to put. I understand
how
the point
to
you're
get there
trying
might
to
be
make. I think that Jeffrey Sachs is being quite silly and dishonest, right? Because I don't believe that poverty is caused on an international scale by a lack of money, right? I think there's all sorts of other factors that are in play. But I get your point. But again, I think we should just focus on what we can agree on. We can agree that we shouldn't have people going hungry. We agree that we shouldn't have people going without medical care or an education, that sort of stuff. Let's argue about how we solve it later. Let's argue about whether or not it should be a sort of supranational tax, which is what you're suggesting, or something else. We can argue all the details, but let's just start from the same starting point that we agree that these things are problems, and then let's bring people from the left, from the right, from religious groups, from non-religious groups, etc., and say, okay, what are we going to do? If we find that this is unacceptable, then what are we going to do to fix it? That's what I think we.
I believe that's definitely words of wisdom that you speak there.
No,
Just
definitely words of
I
wisdom.
try my best to play.
Words of wisdom and everything. We get to wrap up just really quickly. I will add that there were sports franchises, including some in New York. I think it might have been the Jets or one of the other teams, and they literally did what Shaquille and I think you, Cindy, were suggesting, because I remember as reading about it, because it's been out there for a while, that they literally, because in any big sport event there are tons of wasted food, so they gave that food to the folks that were in poverty and everything. Because
I was just sitting in Kenya, as you know, last year I spent quite a lot of time in Africa, and it was actually in the papers over there, and I was looking it up, and there was actually a surplus of food in Kenya being produced by the farmers, and it was the same situation. The farmers were saying, look, we can't afford to ship it to the city, so come out and get it from us, because it's rotting on the side of the road. Like we don't have anywhere to, we've got a surplus, and it's more than what we can sell to the international market, so the rest of it's just rotting. If you're hungry, come and get it. They couldn't get it. So you've got people that are sitting like near the city that don't have enough to eat, and you've got Kenyan farmers that are in the same country that are producing more than. It just doesn't make any sense. It's insanity. And the West comes and says, oh, what we'll do is we'll give you extra money. But this wasn't a money issue. Although, so we're going to send you food, but it wasn't a lack of food that was causing the issue. So we need to be more sensible about our solutions.
You would be interested to find out, when I was young in the 80s, I was working as a musical director on a cruise liner, Cunard Princess. And every night at 2 o'clock in the morning, the food was being thrown from the ship in enormous quantity, and it was all delicious, like caviar and just any food that you can just think about. They all had been thrown from the ship, and there were sharks following the ship and eating the food. Now, next morning, the ship would arrive to Antigua or some all those poor islands. And Antigua, it's funny, they got their independence just shortly before that when I visited them. And they were asking, why do we need this independence? When it was an English country, it was medicine, it was education, it was law and order or so on. And now we don't know what to do. We don't need this independence. Why did we get it in the first place? Children are so poor. They don't have enough food. They are hardly surviving. And all that delicious food was being thrown just 5 hours before the ship went.
Exactly. What would you call that? Is it spite? Is it spite? Like, why would you do that? Well, why would you throw it overboard knowing there's people hungry? So when I was a board member of Aqua Gratis, we used to go around to a lot of the small islands around Indonesia and around the South Pacific. And I was one of the very few people that got to go to the islands that were illegal for anyone else to go to. You can't go there, and some of the tribes will kill you if you do. I was able to go there. And we said to them, we're not going to give you vaccines, which broke my heart. We're not going to give you any vaccines. We're not going to give you anything. We're not going to give you anything at all. The only thing that we're going to do is we're going to give you water. And what we would do is we would give them the solar panel like water purification stations, which is something that's a lot more efficient now. But back then, that's the best we had. And we'd go in, we'd install it, and give them like between 10 and 20 litres of water every day, which was enough for like their little community, because it was our fault that they didn't have the water. But the other thing we should do in some of the like Fijian islands and Indonesian islands, stuff like that, was would say to the yachts, the private yachts that had come in, when you come in and berth, we're using your water filters. And like 99% of people go, yeah, okay, fine, no problems. Because we're like, hey, like we're restocking you, we're doing everything, we're refueling you, we're doing everything. It's not going to cost you anything for us to use your water filters. So we'd use their water filters just so we could give that community, a bit of extra water. And the few times that people would say, no, you can't do that. That's my water filter. I'm like, well, what are you going to do with it? Like, why do you care? Like, this is going to cost you nothing. And we're actually looking after you more than you're looking after us. Like, why do you care? And invariably, that they would. But that's the thing. People just don't see that. As you said, you throw stuff overboard to feed to the sharks, which in and of itself disrupts the whole harmony of what's going on in the ocean. And then you pull in somewhere, there's some 10-year-old kid that doesn't have enough to eat, and you're like, oh, well, sorry.
Oh, just really quickly.
Well, speaking about food deprivation, I'm feeling now deprived of nice dinner. And
it's about time to wrap up and everything, so you got to get to your dinner.
I'm deprived of that great vodka that you gave me last time I was in Toronto.
Everybody's about to be deprived. I was just going to add really quickly, there has been some changes slightly in that, because we do have a show that deals with the cruise industry, ironically by another Cindy Bertram and everything, and she has actually brought up on some of her shows that not all of the lines, but some of the lines are doing some sustainability efforts. So there are some of the ships that are actually changing their mindset and aren't doing like the Cunard was doing when you were a music director. So there have been some initiatives within some of the ship yards and some of the cruise lines. I'm not saying all of them, but there are.
Well, if you can hang around, we'd love to talk to you backstage. We'll pass contact details and stuff after the show. And on behalf of Sasha, I will say to both of you Americans, we are sorry that you've been deprived of a reasonable president.
Well, along those same lines, we get ready to get out of here. Cindy, if you just tell folks one last time how they can reach you and how they can also get your contact information to participate in this race that'll be coming up at the end of July.
Mm-hmm. Well, our email is downstairs in the blue area there, diplomatic office at issnow.earth. And our website is just that, issnow.earth, so www.issnow.earth. And if you go to the website, go to the top, click register now, and register for the Global Race for Sustainability. Join us. Have some fun.
Sounds good. And on that note, we'll get ready to get on out of here. Fun conversation, and we'll be back tomorrow with World Edition. But we're going to get out, but do stick around, Cindy, because I know Shaquille wants to get the contact information with you and everything.
Bye-bye.